Thank you very much for this introduction. I would like to thank JP Morgan and Citi for organizing this event. I am very grateful to our representatives of our business community for this very important event, which is very important for all of us, not only for government of Georgia, but also for businesses and for Georgia generally. We would like to tell you the story about our country. First of all, let me say in a couple of words that we had very successful 5 days in the United States. And we need to mention that Georgia marks, this year we mark 25th anniversary of restoring independence. And these were important years of our country's development with all ups and downs. But during all these years, we had existentially important support from the United States. And we have very important strategic partnership charter with the United States, expressing cooperation and bonds of cooperation in many areas, people to people, economic cooperation, this is security cooperation, military cooperation, and we were here to discuss next 25 years of our partnership, which we believe will be as successful as it was starting our partnership back in the beginning of 90s, when Georgia was a country ravaged by civil war, destroyed by several military conflicts, but we are proud to say today that we are a country in the South Caucasus with democratic systems and institutions, a country which recently signed association agreement with European Union, which strives to join European Union in the future and NATO. And we are a country which has, again, excellent partnership ties with the United States, a country which is the second largest contributor to NATO Resolute Support Mission in Afghanistan, which is very important as Georgia is not a consumer of the security, but also provider of the security, and we participate in many other peacekeeping missions worldwide, such as Central Africa and other countries. But most importantly, Georgia is constantly reforming as a European country, as a country with a very strong European identity. And Georgia historically, culturally, has been a European country. But with the association agreement, now we have an important reform agenda to approximate standards of Georgian institutional democracy to the European standards and to change Georgia's market economy institutions to European standards as part of association agreement reform agenda and as part of deep and comprehensive free trade area agreement with the European Union, which grants Georgia tariff-free trade right with European Union country, but most importantly, changes and transforms Georgia into a country with democratic systems and institutions, with legible legislation and regulatory framework. But it's also important to mention that we are a country with a slightly lighter regulations than a typical European country, and we of course need that to attract investments and to stay flexible and attractive for FDIs in the future. Well, first of all, if you look at Georgia at a glance, we are a country with, despite all the challenges in the region, falling oil prices, fluctuations of local currencies, we turned out to be the most resilient country in the region with growth rates around from 3 to 5% currently, but with above 5% growth rates during the last 6 years, which is very important, and around 5% projected growth rate in the next year. We will end up this year with around 4% growth rate. And with the country with strong international ties, as I already mentioned, strong ties with European Union, with the United States, with good trade ties with our neighbor countries, including Russia, by the way, and I will focus on that issue later in my speech. And also with the visa liberalization action plan, which was successfully completed recently, and the successful report from European Commission was issued in December of the last year, which will grant visa-free travel right to Georgian citizens, which is very important for Georgian students, for Georgian small and medium entrepreneurs to travel to Schengen zone visa-free. And with favorable business environment, and we do have one of the best doing business ranking. We are one of the freest economy in the world. We have one of the lowest corruption rates in the world. And also we have one of the best lowest crime rates in the world. We are sixth lowest crime country in the world. These are recent surveys. And we are 24th country in the world with excellent doing business ranking from the World Bank. And from Heritage Foundation, we have 22nd freest economy ranking. And world governance indicators issued by the World Bank last year shows that in all major areas, such as absence of violence, stability, freedom of expression, rule of law, regulatory quality, Georgia improved from 10 to 15 percentiles in each of these areas annually during the last several years, which is a remarkable achievement and which makes Georgia as an excellent investment destination for international investors. Now, a fast-growing, diversified economy, and I already mentioned that we are growing from, this year we will end up by 4% growth. It's the next year by the IMF, not only by Georgian government, 5% is a projected growth rate. But with our reforms that will be discussed in detail later, we hope to reach higher growth rates. And you can see that GDP is quite diversified with strong services sector, and this is about 31%. And I would like to mention that financial services and transport and communication and tourism and hospitality are the leading subsectors of the services in Georgia. And I would like to say proudly that Georgia is a country of hospitality. Our tourism and hospitality sector is growing. Every year we have from 15 to 20% growth of visitors number. During the last 10 years, visitors number increased 10 times in Georgia, and occupancy rates in the major cities of Georgia, which is Tbilisi and Batumi, are about 75%, which makes Georgia's hotels and hospitality sector very attractive for investments. We have all major international brands represented in Georgia. We have Marriott, Radisson, Holiday Inn, Intercontinental, Rixos, Hilton represented in Georgia. I'm sorry to miss anyone. And we have locally created brands such as Rooms Hotel, owners of which are represented here. And also we have a lot of hotels under construction, but I would like to say that Georgia is a very attractive country in terms of business, in terms of tourism, because Georgians by nature are hosts and guests for us as a gift of God. This is entrenched in Georgian culture, and this is why Georgia, again, is a nice place to visit, and it is a nice place to invest from this, in this respect. I would like to mention about transport and communications, and because of Georgia's geographic locations, Georgia lies between Europe and Asia, and Georgia is a natural connector of Europe and Asia. New projects such as Silk Road Economic Belt Reconstruction Project, which is called One Belt, One Road Initiative. Projects such as Baku-Tbilisi Kars Railway Project, which will be completed in the next year, are excellent examples of cooperation regionally, and we are proud to say that shipments through Georgia are growing, and Georgia is becoming an excellent place for investment in logistics, in transport, and this sector will grow dramatically in the next years. I may be a little bit biased about the banking sector, given my 13 years of commercial banking experience, but I should objectively say that banking sector in Georgia is a leading sector among the former Soviet space countries, but also in the wider region. We have two major banks listed in London Stock Exchange, represented here. And despite all the fluctuations of the currencies in the region, currencies of our major trade partners, we are proudly saying today that because of our prudent and sound monetary policies and because of our very sound fiscal policies, our currency is stable today. Our non-performing loans ratio in the commercial banks not increasing but surprisingly decreasing today. And also I should say that banks are well capitalized, well above the required ratios from the regulatory point of view, and which is maybe more important, banks are attractive in terms of growth rates and very lucrative in terms of return on equity, which is around from 18 to 20%. In both ROE and growth rates are very, very attractive, and again, we are proud of our solid banking system. Let's move to the next slide, and I can say that our fiscal performance is very sound and prudent. You can see that our public debt is as low as 38%, is below 40% of GDP. Our external borrowing rates blended is 1.94%, and average tenure is 22 years, which is very affordable, which makes fiscal sovereign risks very low. And I should say also that current account deficit is around from 10 to 11%, but is decreasing steadily, and it will decrease as low as 7-8% in the next years. Now you can see the effective monetary policy, which was mentioned, and again, during these foreign currency fluctuations, the recent 2 years, we were very conservative in spending our scarce foreign currency reserves, and we had very limited interventions, and you can see the trend, and I can say that because of that conservative policy and sound policy, and because of, despite again the dramatic fluctuations of the local currencies surrounding Georgia, we were able to retain a very stable and sound exchange rate, and I can proudly say that our foreign currency reserves are above 3 months of import amount, which is very sound and very prudent. You can see the diversification of Georgia's foreign debt and special drawing rights, which are used for drawing from international financial institutions and IMF. Is 45%. US dollar borrowings are 35%, and euro is 16%, and other currencies 4%. So you can see that it's quite diversified, and you can see loan servicing projections during the next years, which are very promising and very sound and very affordable. Now, domestic market development. I should also say absolutely objectively again that the financial sector, in the financial sector of Georgia, we have very solid banking sector. We have fast developing insurance sector, but unfortunately until now, the capital market in Georgia stays as most underdeveloped subsector of our financial sector. But for this now we are launching a capital market development project, which is developing first of all corporate bond market, sovereign bond market, and also equities market. And together with that, we are launching pension system reform, the system which will be based on compulsory savings, which will create investable resources locally and liquidity that will be absorbed by the local capital market. So I can definitely say that in 3 years from now, we will have a viable stock market functioning in Georgia, which will be important for exit, as an exit venue for portfolio investors in Georgia, and of course it will be important generally to develop market economy instruments in Georgia. We should also mention that recently EBRD and IFC issued local currency denominated bonds, which is very important to develop a local market and to decrease the exchange rate risks for local stakeholders. And this is about foreign currency reserves that was already mentioned, and you can see that it is very sound. Now you can see our open trade policy, which is a special issue to be presented against this auditorium. Georgia has free trade agreements with European Union countries. We recently concluded negotiations with EFTA countries, which is Norway, Liechtenstein, Iceland, and Switzerland. And these 4 countries will be plugged in to our free trade portfolio. We have free trade with all our neighbor countries, which is Russia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Turkey. And we have free trade with Central Asian countries. And of course, it's important to mention that we lead now negotiations on free trade with China, and hopefully until the end of this year, these negotiations will be completed, and starting from the next year, 1/3 of the world population of consumers will be export market for Georgian producers. This is very important because Georgia is a 3.7 million population country, but this is a country with free trade market of today 900 million consumers, and in the future it will be 1/3 of the world population in the nearest future. And we are the most open economy in this region. We are not protectionist towards our industries. We are protectionist in terms of procuring export markets for our exporters and protecting rights of our exporters to ensure reciprocity in our free trade agreements. This is very important. This is why, and despite all the speculations that open economies are most vulnerable to economic crisis, it turned out and was proved by the recent years that Georgia turned out to be most resilient economy in our region, and we are the most open economy in our region. Now we see stable sovereign ratings from Standard & Poor's, Fitch at BB- and from Moody's Ba3. And you see that outlook in all of them is stable. This is because, again, government's debt burden, because of government's debt burden remains modest, and the fiscal performance is absolutely under control. Because this is because of our long-term growth potential remaining very strong. I mentioned banking sector, because this is because Georgian economy has excellent competitiveness credentials in the region, and also because Georgia is becoming more and more chosen as from international companies as a regional logistics and transport hub for businesses. Now, resilient banking sector, I will not mention about this more. So this is an attractive investment destination, and I would like to mention that indeed we had above 40% growth rates of FDI in 2014, which was the highest in the last 10 years. We had slightly down 1.4 billion investments in 2015, which was lower than 14, and which was, by the way, natural because of falling oil prices. And the reason for that was that our main FDI providers are oil countries, and Georgia has double impact from dropping the oil prices. On one hand, industries benefit from this, but on the other hand, appetite for investments in oil countries are going down because of oil prices going down, and Georgia has, of course, was impacted because of dropping oil prices. But overall, because of our other components of our competitiveness, we remained attractive for investments, and even the $1.4 billion in 2015 was highest during the last 5 years. So we can see that Georgia remains attractive because of, first of all, political stability, and I would like to say more words about this. The biggest achievement for Georgian government during the last 4 years is creating sense of stability in Georgia without conceding in our main foreign policy goals. And I think this is a remarkable achievement, that Georgia remains consistent in its EU and NATO aspirations. We have excellent dynamics in approximation with European standards, which was confirmed at the last two association councils in Brussels by the statements of European Commission. At the same time, Georgia remains very consistent with NATO. We have expanding format of cooperation. Of course, membership is a matter of consensus among NATO members, and we believe that in the future there will be a window of opportunity for Georgia. And again, without conceding in our main strategic vector, we managed to create stability, to decrease temperature with Russia and to decrease tension with Russia. And although we don't have much progress in political dimensions, we have clear progress in terms of having Russian market reopened for Georgian industries, and also having hundreds of thousands of Russian tourists coming to Georgia. And of course, we need normalization of these relations, but again, without conceding in our territorial integrity and sovereignty issues. But it's clear that we were able to create political stability, which is crucially important for attracting investments, creating jobs, and we are proud of that. Business-friendly environment, which I already mentioned, corruption-free public services, increase of market size by FTAs. We have sixth lowest crime rate in the world. We have bilateral investment treaties with 32 countries, and we are signing more and more treaties with many countries according to UNCITRAL standards. We are free. The capital repatriation is free of tax from Georgia. We have competitive cost of labor. We stay relatively liberal in our labor union legislation, which is important for investors. And of course, we have improved access to finance, given our strong banking sector and investment funds. We have a sovereign investment fund. The representatives are here and ready for answering your questions. Georgia's sovereign investment fund is called Partnership Fund, and it is available for any investor as a minority investor up to 49%, which is very important for many investors, and they have growing portfolio. and it is available for anybody who wish to invest in Georgia. We have private funds such as co-investment fund. Also, the chairman is here and he is available for answering questions. And of course, we have representatives of major financial institutions and hospitality companies, communications companies. We have a consortium of communication and hospitality companies. So they are available for B2B meetings. And I would like to take this opportunity and say words of gratitude towards our private sector, who is a driver of Georgia's economic growth and is most important player in Georgia. Now, taxes. We have 6 types of taxes. It's VAT at 18%, 20% personal income tax, corporate income tax, 15% dividend and interest income tax, 5%. We have property tax, and we are launching tax reform from the property tax is 1%, and we are launching maximum 1%, and it's subject to changes by local authorities, but only downward changes, not upward changes. And of course, it's important to mention that starting from January 1st of the next year, we are abolishing profit tax, and only distributed earnings will be taxed starting from January 1st of the next year, and this package of the reforms is in the parliament right now, and most probably it will be passed by the parliament. Now, these are rankings which I already mentioned. Now a few words about our very ambitious reform agenda. These are structural reforms, promoting open governance, promoting transit hub, and education reform. But I will start from education reform, because this is the most important reform among all these 4. We are launching fundamental reform of our education system. We should admit that today Georgia's higher education system produces unemployed people every year. Thousands of unemployed people, thousands of diplomats, 5 times more than there are vacancies in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, several times more accountants, finance professionals, but we have the lack of engineers, lack of agriculture professionals, lack of biophysics professionals, lack of teachers, by the way, qualified teachers. So this is something to be changed, and for this we launched comprehensive needs assessment of the labor market, not only for current needs, but also for future needs of Georgian current market, in order to forecast and spend government scarce resources only in the areas which are most needed. And in addition to that, reforming secondary schools and also reforming Georgia's professional education system, introducing public-private partnerships together with private companies according to German dual education model. And structural reforms, important tax reform, which I already mentioned, but even more importantly, in addition to tax code change, is a fundamental change of tax administration, which is, first of all, saying no to freezing bank accounts without court decisions. This is a fundamental change to get rid of legacy of the past and to again to exclude in the future any freezing of bank accounts without court decisions. Also important, limiting time frame of tax audits by tax officials. And by doing that, Georgian tax authorities will become even more business friendly, and I think we are already one of the outstanding in the region by our excellent revenue services. We have state-of-the-art border crossing procedures, and tax authorities Corruption is very low in Georgia. Very important to emphasize pension reform, which will be introduced in the third quarter of the next year. The design is already ready and approved by the government. Now we are working on the creating of institutional capacity of pension funds, investment funds, custodial institutions. We are proud to say that several of our financial institutions are already capable to provide custodian services and clearing services through Clearstream in Europe, State Bank and Citi in the United States, and other global custodians, which means that transactions in Georgia are clearable. In the future, we are going to plug in Georgian capital market into one of the European capital market platforms, which means that securities locally in Georgia will be visible from international investors and vice versa, and transactions will be clearable not only in the future, but it's possible already today. But also, in addition to that, I would like to mention that it's important that the pension system, on one hand, will improve the living conditions of pensioners and, of course, push the burden of financing from sovereign balance to the private pension funds. But on the other hand, it will create hundreds of millions of investable dollars every year, which will be absorbed by the securities on the local capital market. This is also creating of public-private partnership framework, which is important for infrastructure investments, and I will mention it later about this. This is a public investment management framework. Recently, we approved framework for public capital expenditure, which makes our expenditure even more prudent and based on the cost benefit analysis, and deposit insurance system, which will be introduced in the future, and accounting reform, further reforming of our financial reporting standards, which are absolutely already in line with international standards, and association agreement agenda, which I already mentioned. Now, very important open governance reform. I will say a couple of words about the part of this reform which has already been completed and delivered. This is Investment Council, which was recently created, where we have major international investment institutions and investment community representatives present at the council as members. This is World Bank, IFC, this is EBRD, Asian Development Bank, and representatives of Georgian business community, business association leaders, American Chamber of Commerce, European Chamber of Commerce, several ministers represented economic bloc of the government, and Prime Minister as the chair of Investment Council. Why we need this council? This is a platform for discussing economic reforms, upcoming changes to regulation and legislation to make a regulatory framework in Georgia predictable and avoid any negative surprises for business stakeholders in Georgia. This is very important to make Georgian business regulatory framework predictable, legible for our stakeholders locally in Georgia and also for upcoming investors in the future. And generally, this is a reflection of the spirit of inclusion that is absolutely new and we are developing in Georgian government. And as another reflection of the spirit of inclusion is recently launched negotiations and platform of dialogue between Georgian Prime Minister, your humble servant, and representatives of Georgian civil society and NGO leaders, which is very important for developing democracy in Georgia and for developing spirit of inclusion and to make everybody stakeholder in this very important process of reforms. But more important upcoming part of this governance reform, open governance reform, is a concept of unified front office which will be introduced in the next year. We have public service hall which provides excellent services to individuals, which covers full spectrum of services for individuals. And many of you maybe who visited Georgia recently can see and experience this excellent achievement of the past, by the way, which is an excellent achievement. But we are now going to expand this model and create unified front office for the whole government, which means that we are introducing one roof, one single window services for any legal and physical, any individual and legal entity, company or fund or union in Georgia to get any imaginable service that they can from the government, from any government agency, sovereign fund, under one roof, single window principle, which means raising standards of services provided by Georgian government, which means making Georgian government absolutely service-oriented, and of course decreasing service time and decision time. These new facilities, physical facilities which will be created, will be equipped with state-of-the-art communication facilities and equipment to get communication with the back offices, and back offices will be moved from the center of the city to the suburbs again, and they will have excellent communication with the front officers. The decisions will be fast. It will further eliminate any chances of corruption, which is already one of the lowest, and I already mentioned about it. But most importantly, it will create absolutely new quality of the services provided by the Georgian government. As today, companies are required to go to the Ministry of Economy to get state property management services, to get construction permits. They are obliged to go to Ministry of Energy to get to sign a memorandum on hydropower plant construction. They are required to go to Ministry of Environment to get licenses on the natural resources, go to the sovereign fund and discuss the investment projects and get financing for investment projects, etc. They will have a place where they will go. They will have all representatives of all these front offices, and of course it will entail optimization of the current officers and also special training. They will get all services in one physical space, but of course more importantly, we are already creating e-governance platform for all these services and digital space to provide all these services at the same time under the e-governance unified platform. This is revolutionary reform, and we believe that on one hand it will increase the efficiency of the government, and on the other hand free up the space in the center of the city for office development, hotel development and investments. Important to mention that we have already created special unit which is called Delivery and Control Unit under the Prime Minister to ensure excellent coordination among the agencies and ministries to deliver on the decisions which have already been made. Education I already mentioned, and the fourth block of the reforms is a transit hub and developing Georgia as a transit hub, which means that you can see Georgian map, and we are going to change the strategy of Georgian infrastructure projects so that until end of the 2020, all the transit highways and the main roads connecting main tourist destinations will be finalized, and we will have absolutely modern and compliant to any international standard infrastructure, and Georgia will start to utilize its geographic location and transit potential fully. You can see Georgian map, and you can see that here we have Black Sea coast, and we have now Batumi port, we have now Poti port over here, we have Subsaport, which is mainly used for oil exports. We have Ulevi Port, which is run by SOCAR and also used for oil exports. Batumi Port and the Poti Port are universal ports. And you can see that this is a location for the new port of Anaglia, which will be built in the next 3 years. And we are glad to mention that winners of the tender for investment to this new port, and this will be port which will create absolutely new capacity. This will be port which will be able to receive Panamax and post-Panamax type of ship. Any ship that is able to go through Bosporus will be served in Anaglia port. And this is important to mention that the winner of the tender for investment to this port is a consortium consisting of US company, New Jersey-based engineering company, Conti Group, and the TBC Group, which is a consortium consisting of financial institution, real estate development, and construction company. And in 3 years from now, why is this port important? Because current capacity of transit of containers is 550,000 20-foot equivalent units, TEUs, which is a measure of containers. In the next 3 years, and we are running almost at the capacity. In 3 years from now, we will create additional 500,000 TEU capacity in Anaglia port, and in 7 years from now, 1.5 million TEU capacity in Anaglia port, and finally it will reach 100 million ton capacity for Georgia, which is absolutely feasible given the dynamics of growing transit through Georgia. And I should mention that what gives us reason to believe that this is realistic, because recently, very recently, we had direct trains coming from Xinjiang province of China to Tbilisi in 8 days, which is a very good achievement, because it means that in 10-12 days, containers can reach from China to Burgas port in Bulgaria, or Constanța port in Romania, or even through Danube River to the heart of Europe, to Germany, Regensburg, which means that Georgia connects heart of Europe with Far East. And I can also say that in 12 days, we had containers coming from South Korea, all the way through China, and through Kazakhstan and Caspian Sea and Azerbaijan to Tbilisi. Can you imagine in 12 days? This is very remarkable achievement, especially for goods which are expensive and where capital cost for working capital cost is important. For example, for electronics goods, and they can reach again from China to Europe in about 10 to 12 days. This makes Georgia very competitive in transit routes, and also taking into account some shipments already from Europe to Iran and vice versa. I think it makes Georgia a real hub for transport and logistics. And I should say that already today, this is the events that I described is already reality for Georgia. But given our ambitious plan to upgrade our infrastructure in the next years, which means that we will finish the highways connecting east and west. This is a Turkish-Georgian border, and all the way through Georgia, this is Kutaisi central city, and this is Tbilisi over here, and then the roads connecting through Kakheti, which is a wine country for Georgia, Azerbaijan, and also this is Azerbaijan-Georgian border, this is Georgian-Armenian border, and this is a Russian-Georgian border. So you can imagine that when all these highways are completed, and about 30% is already being completed, and also main tourist destinations, like for example Svaneti over here, which is a combination of culture and ski resort, and the Kutaisi central city will be connected with all the major destinations in Georgia, in 1.5–2 hours time, which means that Kutaisi will become a sort of a transit and logistics hub like Chicago is for the United States. And why we believe so? Because we have now 3 international airports. Tbilisi Airport is run by Turkish company TAV. Batumi Airport is run by Turkish company TAV. They are very well connected with all major destinations in Europe, in Middle East, in Gulf region, with Central Asia, with Russia, with China. We have direct routes. And developing Kutaisi, which is so far under the management of state-owned enterprise, which is called United Georgia Airport. And from Kutaisi, we have low-cost flights to Europe, to Turkey, to Ukraine. We have direct flights from Poland, Katowice and Warsaw. We have Budapest, Kutaisi. We have Vilnius from Lithuania to Kutaisi. We have Istanbul, Kutaisi. We have Kiev, Kutaisi. And starting from September of this year, the main low-cost courier, which is going, and they already made this decision to open base in Kutaisi. They are opening 9 more destinations from Kutaisi to Europe, Berlin, Milan, Thessaloniki, and other cities, which makes Georgia very easily reachable from Europe and from other countries, and it costs lower than 100 euros round trip from Georgia to Europe and from Europe to Georgia, vice versa, which makes again Kutaisi very attractive destination. And again, for example, I can say that Anaglia port, which will be constructed in 3 years from now, is 1 hour from Kutaisi, when of course the highway from connecting Anaglia and the main highway, east-west highway, will be completed. Again, it will be completed in the next several years. For this, we may need a slightly higher borrowing from international financial institutions, maybe slightly higher deficit, about 4% of GDP for the next years, but we will stay very prudent. We are leading negotiations with IFI and IMF, of course, first of all on this, but we believe that these infrastructure projects will pay off with much higher growth rates for Georgian economy, and we believe that in the next years there will be very strong growth, and of course this is absolutely realistic and feasible. And also I should mention Southern Gas Pipeline, which will be completed in the next years. BP is building this pipeline. It's Azerbaijan, Georgia, and it's called Trans-Adriatic and Trans-Anatolian pipelines connecting Europe and Azerbaijan. Hopefully in the future, Turkmenistan will be plugged into this pipeline through Trans-Caspian project. And Georgia is becoming an important place on the map. Again, a reliable country, stable country with excellent investment potential. And also I should mention Georgian Railways, and the chairman of Georgian Railways is here. Georgian Railways is a most important logistics player regionally, and it is constantly modernizing company. They are now modernizing, increasing dramatically the speed through Georgia from east to west. And of course, the railway connecting Anaglia to the main railway will be constructed in the next couple of years. And Georgian Railway also may list a minority of 25% in the next years on the stock market and raise additional capital. Now we need to move to, yes, what will be Georgia 2020, and it's important to view Georgia in the future, and we definitely across the board in the government and across the board in the private sector, this is our common vision, to have Georgia utilizing full potential of our association agreement with European Union, where we have highest growing potential for our manufacturing sector because of export potential, and we already have growing interest from the countries who themselves do not have free trade with European Union. This is again utilizing full potential of our FTAs with other countries. This is in 5 years from now upgrading our credit rating to investment grade BBB, and of course goals which are deeply entrenched in all hearts of Georgians. This is EU membership, and this is a family where Georgia belongs, and historically, culturally. And finally, I should say that before thanking you for your attention, I should say that whatever I say, I may increase and foster your enthusiasm about Georgia, but it may still stay abstract until you come and feel Georgia with your own touch. And Georgia is a country where you can combine business and pleasure. Georgia is a country which can offer excellent seaside resorts, excellent business opportunities. Georgia is a country which can offer wine destinations and nice chateaus in East Georgia with small hotels where you can experience a special touch of Georgian cuisine. And Georgia is a country with modern ski resorts, with one of the longest ski season, with excellent hotel facilities, with Gudauri Resort, which is really proud to have one of the best slopes in Europe, with heli skiing opportunity. We have Bakuriani Resort, which is more traditional, where Soviet Olympic teams used to train. And this is a full season resort because of its excellent pine trees and landscapes. We have newly developed Mestia Resort, which by the way is unique in the world because it is a unique cultural destination with medieval castles of world cultural heritage, with excellent museums, and at the same time with excellent skiing facilities, and at the same time with airport, which makes this mountain resort easily reachable. And of course the newly developed Goderzi ski resort in Ajara, which is a wonderful place where we have green mountain lakes. So it makes Georgia really beautiful, attractive to see. And I'm not mentioning even our capital, which is 1,500 years old. Georgian people are very accepting to other cultures, and you can see the most ancient part of Tbilisi, our capital. You can see Christian churches, Muslim mosques, you can see synagogue, you can see many nationalities for tens of centuries living next to each other peacefully, which means that Georgia is a tourism country. Georgia is a country of international business. This is very important, and you are all welcome to Georgia. Thank you very much for your attention. This was very important time and opportunity for us, for Georgian government, for Georgian business community, and I would like to thank you for your patience, for your time listening to our presentation, and I look forward to hearing your questions and answering your questions. Thank you.
Jeff Lieber from Gazelle Finance. I could make one sort of validating point, and then I've got a question. So we're launching a fund in Georgia, and will be operational this summer. And we had raised most of the equity and the debt, and we were short one slug of money, and we came to the Georgian government, and specifically the partnership fund, and within about 2 or 3 months the money was there. And so I just think it validates that the Georgians stand behind foreign direct investment and really encourage investors. So if you do have a chance to talk to Natye, I highly recommend it because they will help you. My question is, we're launching our fund. We chose to launch the fund in Georgia. We see it as a hub not only for transportation, but we see it financially as a hub for the region, a gateway into Central Asia, Ukraine, Eastern Europe, and Iran. I'm curious, what do you think is going to happen over the next few years with Iran vis-a-vis Georgia? And is it really a gateway that we can look at for accessing the Iranian market and maybe the Iranian market accessing the rest of the world?
Thank you very much, first of all, for your validating comment. And it is indeed true that we provide co-financing for funds, and your fund is very important. I can say that startup financing facilities generally are very important in Georgia. And I am really glad that we made it, and now you are up and running, and I believe that you will have a successful project in Georgia. But on Iran question, I can say that we have recently reopened visa-free travel for Iranians to Georgia. We have growing number of tourists from Iran and also entrepreneurs coming from Iran to Georgia. We cannot predict what will be the future, but we definitely can say that already today we have a growing interest in investments. Iranians are interested to invest in logistics facilities and warehouses close to the Black Sea coast, which means that Iranians are going to use transit routes through Georgia for their shipments to Europe and from Europe. But we can see what will be the development. We would be cautiously optimistic about these relations. We can say that until now we don't experience any problems in that respect. We have growing interest. We have, again, tourists coming to Georgia. Let's see. Thank you.
My name is Asha Mehta. I work for Acadian Asset Management. I manage a frontier public equity investment fund. I thought this presentation was very valuable. It was interesting, informative. I learned a lot. Wondering, you sort of walked through a lot of the investment rationale for an investment in the country. If you could highlight for a novice to this market what you would consider to be the top 2 or 3 risks in terms of an investment in Georgia. Risks.
It's a very difficult question. You know, there are everywhere where you see a profit, of course, there are some risks. But I think I already mentioned that the major risks that we had several years ago, and these were security challenges, first of all, were successfully mitigated by Georgian government and by our, again, balanced, constructive policies towards our neighbors, by our consistency to change the country towards European standards, the risks of lack of local professionals. Maybe I would mention that I believe that we have already addressed through our reform agenda to bridge this gap also through creating public-private partnerships with our private companies and train local professionals. Risk of small markets already mitigated through our free trade agreements. So, I don't know, maybe it's up to analysts and international financial institutions and investment bankers to think more about it. I think we have encountered all the existing risks in our strategy, in foreign policy strategy, and also in our reform agenda. So I don't see really any other major risks. All the risks that I mentioned are absolutely taken into account, and we are working very hard to mitigate those risks. Thank you.
Maybe I'll take the advantage, Mr. Prime Minister, to ask you a question. We were talking over lunch about the South Gas Corridor, the progress and BP's approach, others joining, the importance to Europe. Can you say a few words about that?
Thank you. Indeed, the South Caucasus gas expansion project is a very important project. We already have several pipelines going through Georgia, and this is Baku-Supsa pipeline for oil. This is Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan for oil. This is Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum for gas. And now there is expansion project where additional equipment will be added and the capacity of the pipelines will be increased so that it will be capable to have shipments, increased volumes of shipments of natural gas, and not only from Azerbaijan, but the envisaged capacity can cover the needs of potential future Trans-Caspian shipments from Turkmenistan to Europe. These are important projects, and namely the South Caucasus gas pipeline project is a $45 billion investment. I'm glad to hear, and we had this conversation, that JP Morgan is part of consortium financing this strategically important project. $2 billion out of this project will be spent directly in Georgia. And despite all the challenges regarding oil prices, there was never the slowdown in this project, and the project is going at a full pace. Recently, we had Foreign Secretary of UK, Hammond, visiting Georgia. By the way, we went together to see the construction site, and I can witness with my own eyes that it is going full swing, the construction, and I'm very glad that it will increase the transit importance of Georgia in the future. And I believe that finally also Turkmenistan will be plugged in with its vast resources, which is about 30 billion cubic meters annual production. You can imagine what it can be for European market, and which is about additional from $6 to $7 billion investment in the Trans-Caspian pipeline. And I believe that it will happen and it will start in the near future. So I think this is an excellent project for investment in the future, and I think this is very important, strategically important project for Georgia and of course for Azerbaijan, for Turkey and for Europe. Thank you.